Need more Grok Talk? Well, you can catch new shows Saturday mornings from 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Miss a show? Not a problem. Past shows are rebroadcast here daily from 9 to 11 a.m. Monday through Friday. Join us for 2 hours of unapologetic conservatism. And we're not just armed with opinions.
Grok Talk.
All right, Grok Talk. I am in the room with Skip Murphy, Mike Rogers, and Mr. Ed Naile. Make sure you check us out. Spreaker, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and of course, GraniteGrok.com. We are on The Rock, NHCR.com on Saturday mornings, 9 to 11 a.m. We're also on The Rock and GraniteGrok.com, rebroadcasting programs all week long from 9 to 11 a.m. Wednesday, I broadcast 6 hours straight, 3 past episodes of Grok Talk, and I may actually be evolving that as I develop relationships with other podcasters to share their content should they decide to share ours. So we'll see where that goes. But for now, we're going to talk about not who won the primary or why they won the primary, but the process and some things that were going on, around the whole election.
Well, you're talking about like the headlines of most papers in the last day or two?
That would be true.
The voter fraud, I believe, it made the above the fold on that paper out of Manchester. A story about voter fraud in New Hampshire.
Yeah, it's like they've discovered it all of a sudden, like it never existed. But holy crap!
Yeah, I was interviewed by a radio station in North Carolina. Last night.
Who were you talking to this morning?
This morning it was WEZS up in Laconia. Neil Young. So I've been on Neil Young's show about voter fraud for years.
Mm-hmm.
So since we have been at this, CNHT has been at this since 2000 officially. The news that New Hampshire's primary and all of our elections are a mess is more on display now with a recent Project Veritas action video series that's now being unleashed on the state of New Hampshire. It was on Breitbart this morning, and I think it's going to go on Rush Limbaugh. But the papers picked it up. Now, the papers, I've been working with Project Veritas for a week before they released their video. So when James O'Keefe and Project Veritas came to New Hampshire in 2012, they came, did their thing with getting ballots for dead people with some local help, and went on. And this time they contacted me, said, we'd like a little assistance, and, would you mind working with us? I was delighted. So I was on a conference call with their legal team, let's put it that way, about the script that should be used when you go into a polling place in New Hampshire and you're going to let the people behind the booth or the tables know that you are from out of state. Okay. What's the best way to do this? To walk in as an out-of-state individual and vote in New Hampshire, what's the best way to present yourself? So we went through that, and we checked the statutes, and I told them what to avoid and what would work best, and what towns, and what not what wards, but pretty much what towns, the college towns, and whatnot. And then they would send me back a script, and I would look at the script and send it back to them. I also sent them. I said, this is what I would do. Like I warned them, be very careful about approaching moderators, because most moderators have been moderators for 20 years, and they would be suspicious, or would think something's up. So just go right up like a normal person, go right to the ballot clerks and present yourself and say, I'm from Massachusetts, I want to vote today, and I'm here because of the primary. And then you get a ballot. It's as simple as that. So in the process of doing that, we talked about some other things. I sent them how the process works, and I also sent them something I had from 2014, and that was a 4-page memorandum from the Attorney General's office in which 2 times there were bullet points. And they said this: no one is to be turned away from voting in New Hampshire because they don't have ID. Which that statement was made in this memorandum to election officials. It wasn't to the general public. But luckily for me, I know some election officials, and somebody emailed it to me. So I gave that to them. They were delighted to have that. And I believe that in one pocket was a script, and the other pocket was the Attorney General's office memorandum on out-of-staters are allowed to vote here. And no election official shall turn anybody away. So we have that to go on. So they thought, hey, we're on pretty safe turf.
Which basically said they defenestrated the law.
Yeah, they've taken away the authority of the local officials. They've superseded that with a stupid memorandum from an idiot at the Attorney General's office. So that's how it went. In the process, like introducing each other, they said, we're actually staying in a safe house. We rented a place. We have a place we can stay. And they said, can you possibly come see us? And I said, okay, where is it? 6 miles from my house. I said, I'll be there in a minute.
You could have just put them up at yours.
I'll be there in a minute. So I go over and I meet them. We yakety yak and swap some stuff around, and how to get comfortable with doing this. And then I gave him a rundown on, let's say, voter fraud flop houses, places where people regularly, and we have tracked since 2008, college students from out of state using voter fraud flop houses in New Hampshire, and I have not released those to anybody. So I'm keeping in the background unknown places where out-of-staters vote. I'm not screaming to the press with it, but I'm okay, fine. I know that this person from out of state voted there in 2008, working for this candidate. In 2012, this guy voted there. In 2016, we'll find out who votes there then. And I have what's called a pattern, right? An undeniable pattern. I know who owns the property. I know everything about it. I've had the time to do that. So I said, I was describing voter fraud flop houses to him. And I said, I have this one in particular where this woman that was a illegal voter in 2008 is now going on. She works for a television station. The next one, this guy's a fundraiser for Hillary, and they named the guy's name. You mean so-and-so? I said, yeah. How did you know who that was? Well, he's gone on from stealing a vote, this low-life dirtball, stealing a vote in New Hampshire in 2012 to being an individual known for political activity in California. We're already working on him in a sting. We already got him on video in California on something
Nice.
else. So, okay, let's move on to the next one. They said, now we sent the people into the different wards and polling places to gather information. They have these little buttons on their shirt. Just looks like a regular old button. And that's their camera. So they go in with a script. They got the AG's approval to go do this, which is what I'm calling it, approval.
Blessing.
Yeah, the blessing. That's more like it, yes, from on high.
So they actually spoke with the AG before they went in?
No. They have the memorandum from the AG in documentation in their pocket. So they've read that, and they understand the statutes, and I would say RSA 654-7, RSA 654-13. So, and their guys would look that up, and they would read it over the phone on the conference call to everybody else. So we all understand that. So now they're starting to go accumulate video. And they would say, here's what we got from Portsmouth. Here's what we got from Oyster River. Here's what we got from Nashua. So would you review this, Ed, and see what you think? So I'm looking at it going, oh, man, you got them good here. You got them. Oh, this is really good. Oh, on this one you might want to, go back or put that one off to the side. Because let's say 4 or 5 of these are interesting, but 25 of these are really, really, really interesting. So there becomes a point where no matter what you hand them, it's now valid because everything else backs it up. That's the pattern I'm talking about. So we're talking about the dialogue that their person, their journalist has with the election official, and they said, we got to get this guy, and they give me a first name. I said, all right. He works for Bernie Sanders, so we only have the first name. We got a really, really good bite on this guy. Can you help us? I said, all right, fine. So I go and I find the guy's last name. I said, I think this is the last name. Mr. Sleuth. I think this is the last name. I send it off to my guy that does background searches. He comes back. Now we got a middle name. We got a middle name, the whole name, the middle name, and his birth date. And he's a registered voter in Colorado Springs.
Well, so that's Michelle Malkin's place.
So I sent it off to James or the other people there. So I'm in contact with 4 or 5 different people. Sometimes it's a cluster. There's a whole bunch of them get what I send them. Sometimes maybe just one. I don't know. I'm just sending. So they said, we got this guy. Now, we have the first name, the middle initial, and the last name, and it's solid. And here's the dialogue we have with him. And this individual voted from a commercial property in Manchester after sending himself mail to that commercial property ahead of time and living 25 miles away in another town at a voter fraud flophouse. So he's in New Hampshire, working for Bernie Sanders. He's a paid staffer. He's staying in a voter fraud flop house in this other town with 2 people, and we only know their first names. So, Ed, how do we uncover this? So I go to that town, and I took my crusty little right finger, and I went down that list till I found 2 people with that first names with the same last name. And I went to that house, and guess what? It's covered with Bernie Sanders signs. The cars have Bernie Sanders stickers, and I got their name. So I'm thinking, I'm going to put this guy in my database. And I go over to the left-hand side, and I go to punch in blah, blah, blah. I already have a file on the guy from last year. What are the odds of that, right?
Oh, but you're picking on this poor socialist supporter. All they want to do is redistribute your vote wealth.
Probably not pay his college loans. Probably what he's really after. So I send that to him. They're going, where did you get this? This is from last year. I said, somebody from another town sent it to me because they said this guy smelled bad. He was like, I do not trust this guy, right? So they sent it to me, and I have quite a bit of stuff like this. People say, I'm just sending you just as a tip. I mean, here's a license plate number. Here's something I overheard. And it comes to me, and it's amazing how it falls into place if you have enough stuff. So I go to now I have 2 files in this guy. One with his name and the second with his middle name. But he's a registered voter in Colorado Springs. He is a low-life, dirtball, scumbag vote thief. He's going to get exposed in one of the next videos. So I can't give his name yet.
Now, I put up the first video along with a little bit of a snark there because, when people do this, they're stealing our votes. When I watch the video...
no matter what the AG says, they are stealing our votes.
Yeah, and when I watch the video, it isn't so... And I sent this out to a number of people in the press, including at Patch. And I was included in an email that came back because the League of Women Voters are all complaining about this. I look at that and go, why are these election officials bending over backwards to hide their eyes to allow this to happen? It's like being on a budget committee. You are supposed to be the last bastion of protecting the taxpayers versus a lot of those, the spenders who say, we're the ones who are supposed to be advocating for the town spending. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at these election officials going, why aren't they shutting these people down right off the bat?
They got the memo. They have no authority to shut anybody down.
Even if you look at the RSAs?
They got the memo in 2014 from Steve Labonte, no one is to be turned away. And we've heard moderators, some people have tipped me off. My moderator said, anyone who walks in here is voting and they're leaving. I'm not turning anybody away. They got the memo. So this goes back to the Attorney General's
So this
office.
is sanctuary city voting.
That's exactly what it is, yeah. And it's all basically on the say-so of one memo.
So this is like the Dear Colleague letter out of the
Which is
Department
just an
of
interpretation of the law and not like law created by our legislature.
Seems like some of these voters and the AG need to be taken all the way to New Hampshire Supreme Court and proven.
Well, here's the thing: you go to Supreme Court. Supreme Court will vouch for them. This has to go federal because this is a federal election. So
yes, it was.
Yeah, we don't. The court system's not going to defend this.
No, well, the court system here in New Hampshire would protect them. They would say anything. And if you went to the Supreme Court, who would you get to do that? When the last time we were in the Supreme Court, Steve Labonte protected our vote by stipulating that domicile and residence didn't mean what they say.
Yeah,
that's stipulation in the court case. But so when we went to court in April, I guess it was last year, to keep out-of-state voters from voting here, the Supreme Court ruled in Steve Labonte's favor because he handed the case over by stipulating, I have no case before it even started. That's a fact. So that's just the way that it is. So this is a corrupt, crooked AG's office and a compliant court system that's made up mobile domiciles for ages. So I would never, ever depend on these people for a court case unless I was to file something and that was looking at the public seeing what I have. Because if I file what I have in Superior Court, it becomes a public record whether I win or lose. I have nothing to lose now.
So from the bottom to the top, from the town councils to the AG's office to the governorship to the senators that are supposed to represent our interest, the wooden house of New Hampshire is owned and operated by the termites.
Correct. Yeah, and has been for a long, long time.
And no, the NHGOP and Jennifer Horn have not been
yes,
defending
I am glad you brought
voter
that
rights
for
years.
Wasn't that the most offensive letter?
I laughed.
Tell our listeners what this is all about.
I laughed so hard. Well, the Veritas video comes out, so the NHGOP jumps on their horse. It's a very high horse, and they try to
on their horse with their horn in their hand.
On their wooden hobby horse full of termites, and they try to fundraise off this.
Yeah.
And they basically say, "Oh, we're all behind this whole defending the voter thing." Now, Those of you who listen to this program or read what Ed writes or check out CNHT or GraniteGrock.com know that one of the reasons why we had so many issues with advancing previous cases is that the NHGOP was defending vote stealers who were related to Republicans.
Like Jeb Bradley's son.
Right, and we're talking maybe one or two people versus the
thousands.
literally thousands that Ed has uncovered, and Rich and us and everybody else and all the people in the towns who are quietly sending Ed emails. There are thousands and thousands of illegal voters every single election in the state of New Hampshire, and the NHGOP abdicated
Right. Its responsibility
to defend those voters because of one person and one election.
They abdicated their responsibility so the Democrats could abscond with their votes.
Correct.
And I was told
Today's
exactly,
word of the day.
I was told this explicitly by somebody who used to be a very high-ranking NHGOP official who later quit because of the malfeasance of Jennifer Horn in disgust. But I was told that the reason why the NHGOP dropped and didn't want to touch this hot issue, which could have garnered them lots of niceties from the base, is because specifically of the Jeb Bradley son issue.
It was a no-lose for them. All they had to do was cooperate with me, and it's a no-lose.
And I told them this over and over again. We've got all this information because CNHT, Mr. Ed,
and my team,
and your team have got all this stuff. And they said, we won't do it because of politics. And again, we come back to winning is the only priority for these politicos.
Well,
they don't care.
I've gone from Johnny One Note. How long have I been talking about this on this program? And
as long as we've had this program.
Yeah, I've been talking about
Meet
voter
the New
fraud.
Press before that.
I've been talking about voter fraud forever. Now I'm a Johnny One Note. I repeat over and over again. Domicile meets domicile. Now I've gone from Johnny One Note to Johnny Multiple Videos.
Yeah.
So now it's getting a little tougher. So the ratchet gets tighter as we go along. I now have more access to outside help from other states. I get more dangerous to deal with every time this goes on. Since 2012, we have 1,300 uninvestigated out-of-state voters from then. People with no ID, they're still on the rolls. 2014, thousands again. It's got to be 1,300, something like that again. And for this one, 2016, we're going to have thousands of people who voted without any ID. You send them a letter, and it comes back undeliverable, or that doesn't come back at all. So how many of those do we have to compound every election until this thing falls in on itself? I'm perfectly happy to let that happen.
I'm really waiting to see what the voting day registrations are going to be, because when I went to vote just after work on Tuesday, the line was out the door for people to register to vote in New Hampshire, and I have never seen that line in Guilford. Now, last time this happened, 10% of the voters to 12% of the voters who voted for the presidential election were same-day registrants.
Yeah,
you're talking 2012 here.
Yeah.
8 wasn't quite so bad, I don't think. McCain
it
was
started
just an awful...
2012 was, you're right, 10%, you had 100,000... Yeah, 100,000 new registrations.
You also have to remember
99,000 something, and 22,000 came with no ID.
You have to remember also that in the lead up to this, lots of people who never used to vote or participate are registering because of Trump, and we know that.
Yes.
Because that's part of the press. That's common knowledge. So you'll have a lot of people who are registering for the first time to vote who are residents, but as you know, there's always every election going to be tons of people who
I'm going to
don't
bet
belong
you the
here.
Trump people came with a driver's license,
yeah,
or
they
some
did.
form of
they
ID.
Did. They probably live here.
And it's a good point. And the first set of numbers coming out basically showed higher numbers of Republicans voting this time than the Democrats, and even in this new day registrations, more Republicans than Democrats. Mm-hmm. And I would have to say Trump has done, regardless of what the establishment, Papa Smurf has said, I don't understand the electorate, but they came out to vote, and whether they like Trump or not, he's doing exactly what the Republican autopsy report said. Well, we have to reach out to more people. Well, Trump's done exactly that, and now the establishment Republicans are mad at him for doing exactly what they said had to be done.
When it comes to Trump, I know that Trump knows this. Everything that we did, I know Trump knows it. So it's been passed on to candidate Trump knows about the voter fraud in New Hampshire and understands that. So
I
that's just the way that is.
And I can see that it happened at the highest level of his campaign too.
Yeah, I would guarantee that he has reviewed what's going on in New Hampshire. The other thing I wanted to mention was I shouldn't really be involved in this unless I have a solution to it. And there is a way.
You want to tell us what your solution is after the break?
I will. I'm going to store it up and bottle it up inside.
All right, hang on a second. We will take this short break, and then we'll find out what Ed's going to tell us.
Excellent.